There are a couple of things which are going on here today, which is not acceptable. And I ask all members, please, to keep themselves, to control themselves.
I've got to ask you about the CRTC.
Another Liberal, another apology.
I am very sorry.
The latest from Quebec MP Greg Fergus.
Freedom of speech in Canada just took a massive hit, and you won't believe who's behind it. Greg Fergus, the Speaker of the House of Commons, crossed a line that many thought was uncrossable in a democratic society. In a move that's been called everything from authoritarian to un-Canadian, Fergus muted Pierre Poilievre for daring to criticize the government's policies. But this isn't just about one politician being silenced. It's about the future of free speech in Canada. And trust me, what happened next will leave you stunned.
I order you to withdraw from the House and from any participation by video conference for the remainder of this day's sitting.
Greg Fergus isn't your average Speaker of the House. He's become Trudeau's personal censor, wielding the mute button like a weapon against democracy. Fergus has silenced opposition members time and time again, cutting their mics with shocking frequency. It's not just a few isolated incidents, and we're talking about a pattern of censorship that's left Canadians stunned.
If he weren't parliamentary secretary to the Prime Minister.
Canada is presided over by a government that is fraught with ethical law-breaking.
The numbers don't lie. Fergus has muted opposition MPs over 50 times in the past month alone. That's more than any other speaker in Canadian history. But it's not just the quantity that's alarming, it's the clear bias in his actions. Whenever tough questions come Trudeau's way, Fergus is there to protect him, ready to silence anyone who dares challenge the Prime Minister. Opposition MPs are furious, and rightfully so. Conservative MP John Brassard called Fergus's behavior a disgrace to the office of Speaker. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh went even further, saying, "This is an attack on the very foundations of our democracy." The outrage is palpable, and it's not just coming from politicians. Canadians across the country are speaking out against this blatant censorship. Fergus's actions are undermining the very purpose of Parliament. How can there be meaningful debate when one side is constantly silenced? How can the opposition hold the government accountable when they're not even allowed to speak? This isn't just about politics. It's about the fundamental principles of democracy. It's no wonder people are calling Fergus Trudeau's personal censorship agent. His actions show a clear pattern of protecting the Prime Minister at all costs, even if it means trampling on the rights of elected officials to speak freely in Parliament. This isn't what Canadians expect from their democracy, and the backlash is growing. But Fergus's reign of censorship is about to face its biggest challenge yet. Pierre Poilievre, the fiery opposition leader, has had enough. He's gearing up for an epic confrontation, promises to shake the very foundations of Parliament Hill. Fergus may think he can silence anyone who opposes Trudeau, but he's about to learn that some voices simply won't be muted. Tension in the House of Commons was thick enough to cut with a knife. As Pierre Poilievre took the floor, you could hear a pin drop. No one expected the bombshell he was about to drop. How did Poilievre's speech managed to increase his approval ratings by a staggering 7% overnight? November 5th, 2024 will go down in Canadian political history as the day Greg Fergus faced his reckoning. The House of Commons was electric, filled with anticipation and tension. As Poilievre strode in, his presence commanded attention. Eyes locked on him, waiting for what would come next. Poilievre wasted no time launching into a scathing takedown of Fergus's censorship. His words cut through the air like a knife, exposing the rot at the heart of Parliament. This speaker was less of a neutral umpire and more of a dedicated bodyguard for Trudeau's administration, Poilievre declared, his voice ringing with conviction. The opposition leader's critique was relentless and precise. He laid bare Fergus's repeated use of the mute button, painting a picture of a speaker more concerned with protecting Trudeau than upholding democracy. Poilievre's words resonated deeply with Canadians who had grown tired of seeing their elected officials silenced. In a powerful moment, Poilievre emphasized the crucial role of opposition in a functioning democracy. It is important that we ask questions in question period to make government accountable, he stated. His words a rallying cry for free speech and transparency. As Poilievre spoke, you could feel the tide turning. His arguments weren't just political points. They struck at the very heart of what Canadians value in their democracy. He exposed Fergus's hypocrisy, showing how the speaker's actions contradicted the very principles he was meant to uphold. The impact of Poilievre's words was immediate and far-reaching. Canadians from coast to coast rallied behind his message, recognizing the threat to free speech that Fergus's actions represented. Social media exploded with support as people shared clips of the speech and and voiced their agreement. As the dust settled on this confrontation, it was clear that Canadian politics would never be the same. Poilievre had not just challenged Fergus, he had sparked a national conversation about the importance of free speech and accountability in government. The aftermath of this explosive takedown would send shockwaves through the entire political landscape, leaving both Fergus and the Liberal government scrambling to respond. While Poilievre's words still echoed through Parliament, something unprecedented was happening outside its wall. His approval ratings didn't just improve, they skyrocketed. But as one political star rose, another was in free fall. What devastating blow was about to hit Trudeau's government? Poilievre's popularity exploded after his bold stand against censorship. His approval rating surged by a massive 7%, a jump that left political analysts stunned. Canadians from all walks of life rallied behind Poilievre's message, recognizing him as a champion of free speech and accountability. The public's response was swift and powerful. A massive petition demanding Fergus's resignation began circulating online, gathering hundreds of thousands of signatures in just days. People were fed up with the silencing of elected officials, and they weren't afraid to show it. But while Poilievre basked in newfound support, Trudeau's popularity took a nosedive. An Angus Reid poll revealed a shocking truth. Trudeau's approval ratings plummeted from 42% to 37% in just 3 months. This dramatic drop sent shockwaves through the Liberal Party, leaving them scrambling for answers. Social media became a battleground, with hashtags like Fergus must resign trending across platforms. Clips of Fergus's censorship actions went viral, shared by outraged citizens who couldn't believe what they were seeing. The internet was ablaze with posts expressing frustration over the government's overreach. This event didn't just change poll numbers, it transformed public perception of censorship in Canada. People who had never given much thought to parliamentary procedure were suddenly discussing the importance of free speech in government. The nation woke up to the reality that their democracy might not be as secure as they once believed. As the dust settled, it became clear that there would be consequences for Fergus and the Liberal government. The public's trust had been shaken, and they were demanding action. With pressure mounting from all sides, Fergus found himself in an impossible position. Would he step down, or would the Liberals try to weather this storm? One thing was certain: Canadian politics would never be the same. The people had spoken, and their verdict was clear. They wanted a government that valued transparency and open debate, not one that silenced opposition at every turn. As the nation watched and waited, the question on everyone's mind was, what happens next? Greg Fergus thought he could silence the opposition, but he never expected the deafening roar of public outrage. Now, as he scrambles to defend himself, new evidence threatens to tear down the facade of impartiality in Canadian politics. Will Fergus's words be his final undoing? Facing a tsunami of criticism, Fergus tried to justify his actions. He claimed he was just maintaining order in the House, but his weak excuses only poured gasoline on the fire. Canadians weren't buying it. They saw right through his flimsy defense. Fergus dug himself deeper, calling Poilievre's comments excessively scornful and personal. But this excuse backfired spectacularly. People quickly pointed out how other MPs had used similar language without getting muted. Fergus's double standard was on full display, and it wasn't pretty. The speaker's attempts to explain himself revealed a web of contradictions. He had previously stressed the importance of neutrality in his role. Now, his actions screamed partisanship. Canadians were left wondering, how can we trust a speaker who says one thing and does another? As Fergus fumbled, new instances of his bias came to light. Reports surfaced of him consistently muting opposition members during crucial moments of government accountability. The pattern was undeniable. Fergus wasn't just protecting Trudeau, he was suffocating democracy itself. The alarm bells are ringing. Is Canadian democracy under threat? The signs are troubling. When the Speaker of the House becomes a tool for silencing dissent, the very foundations of our political system start to crumble. Canadians are waking up to a chilling reality. Their right to hear tough questions answered is being stripped away, one muted microphone at a time. The calls for Fergus to step down are growing louder by the day. Canadians from all political stripes are uniting in their demand for a speaker who truly upholds the principles of free speech and fair debate. The pressure is mounting. Fergus is running out of excuses. What about Poilievre? His refusal to back down came at a cost. He faced penalties for standing his ground, losing 3 questions during a subsequent question period. It was a direct result of not withdrawing comments Fergus deemed unparliamentary. Yet, for many Canadians, this sacrifice only cemented Poilievre's status as a defender of free speech, willing to pay the price for speaking truth to power. This censorship scandal ripped the mask off Canada's democracy, exposing cracks nobody saw coming. Fergus thought he could silence the opposition, but he unleashed a firestorm instead. Canadians are furious, and they're not backing down. They want leaders who can not run and hide behind a mute button. But this fight's far from over. The battle for free speech in Parliament is just heating up. Poilievre's epic takedown was just the beginning. Now Canadians are demanding real change. They're sick of politicians playing games with their democracy. Will Parliament finally listen, or will they keep trying to silence the voices of the people? One thing's for sure, Canadians won't stand for censorship anymore. Gloves are off, and the fight for true democracy is on.